time to do a brake job on a Juke. Alright, so we're going to do the rear brakes on a Nissan Juke. This is the same process for your Sentra, your Rogue. They're pretty much all the same. It's got a rear drum for emergency brake, and then it's got a disc brake for the primary brakes. So we're going to go ahead and change the pads and rotors. You're going to need a wire brush, a flathead screwdriver, a 17mm wrench, a 14mm wrench, a hammer, C-clamps, or a brake caliper tool. If your pads do not come with disc brake lube, you will need some of that, some brake cleaner, and a fresh rag. So the factory lug nut size is a 21. These aren't factory lug nuts, so you're just going to want to take those off after you get the vehicle all jacked up on jack stands. Safety first. Alright, so the first thing you're going to want to do is take off this caliper, and that would be your 14mm. I'm going to give it a good solid whack to crack those free. And then once you get those off, wiggle it back and forth, and that should pop right off for you. Don't let it hang by the line, so just kind of sit it up on top of your suspension. Now you're going to want to pull your brake pads off. And I know these brake pads look like they have a ton of life on them, but you can see they're not wearing across the back. It's starting to make some grinding noise. That's why we're changing them. Now we're going to want to take off the bracket itself. The bracket uses 19mm bolts on the back. Can't get the camera in there. I'll run the back though. Same thing with the other bolts. Give it a whack. Break those free. Bracket should slide right off. Put that aside for now. Now it's time to take off the rotor. They like to get rusted on the hub here. If you can't spin it by hand, it's usually a good idea to go in and loosen up the e-brake. But in this case, you're just going to want to take a hammer, give it a few whacks, and that pops right off. You're going to want to take this rubber insert out for the new rotor. Let me throw this aside. You can see you got bad wear right there, causing a noise. Alright, so now we're going to want to prep our rotor to go on the car. You're going to want to get some chlorine-free brake parts cleaner and a brand new rag. And you want to just spray the contact section of the rotor. You want to keep as much oil on here as you can. It prevents rust and corrosion. And just take your rag and just wipe off the oils. And then because we're doing rear brakes, you're going to want to spray the outer rim where the actual pad goes. You're also going to want to spray in here because this is your e-brake contact surface, and you don't want that being all oily and slippery, then you won't have an e-brake. And the same thing, just wipe it all off. Alright, now you're going to want to put the rotor on the hub. Now your e-brake might be adjusted too far out. If it is, you're going to want to take a flathead screwdriver on the adjustment down here and just bring it in a little. Make sure when you put it on, you try to align the open hole for the adjustment screw near the adjustment screw. Just makes it easier later on when you need to do the e-brake adjustment. And what I like to do is I like to take a lug nut and just throw it on there to hold the rotor in place while you do the rest of the stuff with the pads. Like that. Now we're going to adjust the e-brake shoe on the inside. Now to do that, there's a little threaded piece on the shoe insert. You're going to want to slide a screwdriver into that, and you're going to want to tighten it up. Kind of just got to feel around until you get to it. You want to tighten it up until it's all the way out and contacting the rotor, so that the rotor actually doesn't spin. And what that's doing is setting the e-brake all the way out. So now I can't turn the hub. And then what you're going to want to do is actually back it off maybe half of a rotation. So maybe like just go in there and just twice, just flick the notches down so the rotor still turns, and you should hear slight contact of the shoe and the rotor. Not sure if you can hear that on camera. That tells you that the e-brake is adjusted properly so that if you pull the e-brake handle, it will actually grab onto the drum. So now it's adjusted, I'm going to take the rubber insert and just pop that back into place. Now we're going to prepare the bracket for the new pads. The particular kit that I get from PowerStop comes with all the hardware that you're going to need. So what I'm going to do is just take off the old slides. Some cheaper brake hardware, brake pad kits don't actually come with new hardware. So you'd want to take a wire brush and actually just clean these up. I'm getting rid of these for new ones, though you still want to take a wire brush and kind of clean where that sits. Rust accumulates back there and some dirt, and it causes improper spacing, which can make it a pain to get the new brake pads in. So once that's up, now just put in your new hardware. It should just pop right in. Like that. Your brake pad kit should come with some silicone brake component lubricant. I don't use the stuff out of the bags. I prefer using the stuff that's in a can. And that's just because this is easier to apply. There's nothing wrong with the stuff that comes in the can. This is just easier to put on. It has a brush, you don't have to get it all over your fingers and such, and this is a little quicker. So you want to get that where the pad is actually going to slide in and where it's going to slide on. It doesn't need to cover the entire thing, just where the pad is going to make contact. Just like that. Alright, so now I'm going to put the bracket back on the car. So you just want to slide it in there, get one bolt threaded in, get it started. And once that's started, you grab your other one, thread that in. So now that's all tightened up, we're going to take our new brake pads. These are them. The side that has the notch sticking out goes on the outside. The side that's smooth on the inside, that goes on the inside. And you're going to want to apply some of that lubricant to the outside of the pad. And then those should just slide right into place. Alright, now we get to the more tricky part of this, which is actually compressing the piston back into the caliper. The reason I say it's more tricky is because they do sell a special tool for this, a couple different special tools actually that you can use. If you don't have the specialty tool for collapsing that, a C-clamp like this one works fine, or some big pliers. It shouldn't take a whole lot of force to compress this, but it will take a little bit of work if you don't have a tool designed for it. Like this one, for instance, is not designed for this, but I'll show you how to make it work. So you just want to make sure that you're on the piston on the inside, on a surface on the outside, and that when you squeeze this, or rotate this, I should say. Piston compresses in. When you feel the piston stop, don't try to force it in anymore. You don't want to cause some damage. So now that we have the piston compressed, we're going to go ahead and just slide the caliper back into place. Now, the slides that came off before you put them back in, you're going to want to, if you see any rust on them, you want to clean the rust off. And you want to just put a little bit of this lube on there as well. This just prevents rust from happening and also helps the brakes work a little bit better. So then that just slides back into its slot. Just catch the threads really quick. And do the same thing for the other one. Slide that in. Okay, take it off. And that's pretty much it. You put your wheel back on, torque it down to 84 foot-pounds. If you don't have a torque wrench, then torque it tight and then have it checked out somewhere that does have a torque wrench. Before you drive the car, put it in drive, make sure you pump the brake pedal a few times to recompress that caliper. And then drive around the block, make sure there's no squeaking, make sure you didn't bend your backing plate. You're good to go. You do the same thing on the other side.